I woke up because something was wrong with the bed. Not the normal kind of wrong like a bad dream or a twisted blanket. This was the heavy kind of wrong. The kind where your brain wakes up first and starts quietly asking questions while the rest of your body is still deciding whether or not it wants to panic. Something was pressing down on the mattress, right next to me. For a few seconds I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling of my tiny station apartment, while my brain tried to process the situation. The environmental lights were dimmed for night cycle, so the room was painted in that faint blue glow every corridor on the station had after midnight. I slowly turned my head, and nearly screamed. My alien roommate was sitting on my bed. Not standing near it. Not leaning against the wall. Sitting. Calmly. Cross-legged. About half a meter away from my legs like they'd been there for hours. And they were staring at me. Their eyes reflected the soft light from the wall panels, glowing faintly like polished glass. Their species had that smooth, pale skin that almost looked like marble under station lighting, and their long silver hair floated slightly around their shoulders in the low-gravity environment. They blinked slowly when they noticed I was awake. "Oh," they said casually. "You are conscious again." My heart was trying to escape through my rib cage. I pushed myself upright in the bed, grabbing the blanket like it was somehow going to protect me from whatever weird alien ritual I had just interrupted. "Why?" I said slowly. "Are you sitting on my bed?" They tilted their heads slightly, the way their species did when processing information. I'd only been living with them for 2 weeks, but I'd already learned that expression meant they were thinking very hard about something extremely simple. I wished to ensure the bonding process was completed correctly. I stared at them. "I'm sorry," I said. "The what process?" "The bonding process." They said it like they were explaining the weather. My brain was still stuck on the more immediate problem. It was 2 in the morning. My alien roommate was sitting on my bed. And they were talking about something called a bonding process like this was all perfectly normal behavior. "Okay," I said carefully. "New rule. Before we continue whatever this conversation is, you need to explain why you are in my room. On my bed. At this hour." They nodded politely. "That is reasonable." Then they folded their hands in their lap like a student presenting a research report. "I have been studying human social customs." I groaned internally. That explained a lot. Ever since they moved in as part of the interspecies cultural exchange program, they had been obsessed with human media. Movies. Shows. Documentaries. Dating programs. Even those terrible late-night reality series humans somehow exported across half the galaxy. They watched everything. And they asked questions about all of it. Questions like why humans argued about dishes, why humans held hands in public, and why humans in movies dramatically confessed their feelings in the rain. At the time it had been funny. Now I was beginning to suspect it might also be dangerous. "So," I said cautiously, "what does that have to do with you appearing in my bedroom like a horror movie ghost?" They gave a small, proud smile. "I have discovered a very important human tradition." I rubbed my face with both hands. "Oh no." "Yes." "No, seriously," I said. "That tone you just used is the exact tone people use right before they say something completely insane." They ignored that. "In multiple human documentaries and narrative programs," they continued, "individuals who share sleeping spaces develop lifelong emotional bonds." My brain froze. I lowered my hands slowly. "What?" They gestured proudly at the bed. "This is a sleeping space." "Yes," I said. "And I am sharing it with you." "Yes," I said again, dread forming like a black hole in my stomach. They smiled wider. "Therefore the bond has been established." The silence in the room lasted about 3 seconds. Then I said the only thing my brain could manage. "That is absolutely not how that works." They blinked. "But the documentaries were very clear." "Were these documentaries," I asked slowly, "actually romantic movies?" "They contained many emotional bonding scenes and orchestral music." I pointed at them. "Those are movies." "Yes." "Those are fictional." They appeared educational. I took a deep breath. Okay, I said calmly. Let's reset. Humans do not become lifelong partners simply because they share a bed once. They frowned slightly. That contradicts the data. What data? The 37 films I analyzed. I stared at them. You based a cultural conclusion on romantic comedies. They had very high emotional accuracy. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Before I could continue, they leaned forward slightly with visible excitement. However, I believe the process has already progressed successfully. What process? The announcement. The word hit my brain like a falling asteroid. What announcement? They reached into the small pouch at their side and pulled out a tablet. Then they showed me the screen. At the top was the station's public cultural network. And right under it was a bright message posted less than an hour ago. A message written in their name. It read, Human resident and I have successfully initiated a bonding partnership according to human tradition. Celebration messages are welcome. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Then the notification counter started climbing. 20 messages. 30. 50. Congratulations. Celebrations. Someone had even added animated fireworks. My alien roommate watched the screen happily. It appears the station community is pleased. I slowly lowered the tablet. You told everyone? Yes. Everyone on the station? Yes. At 2 a.m? Yes. I stared at them. They stared back with complete innocence. And in that moment I realized something truly horrifying. My alien roommate hadn't just misunderstood human culture. They had just announced to 5,000 people on a multi-species space station that we were officially in a relationship. The next morning, I woke up to the faint hum of the station's environmental systems and a light tapping at my door. My brain wasn't ready for consciousness, let alone for the kind of chaos that had apparently followed my roommate's midnight initiative. I rubbed my eyes and sat up, still half convinced that last night's events had been some fevered hallucination, a combination of sleep deprivation and low gravity messing with my perception. But the first thing I saw when I opened the door made me realize that it wasn't a hallucination at all. My alien roommate was there, standing in the doorway with that infuriatingly calm smile plastered on their face. They were holding a tray with some kind of alien breakfast food I hadn't dared to ask about yet, and the aroma was surprisingly pleasant, almost like toasted almonds mixed with something faintly metallic. Partners should begin the day with nourishment, they said proudly. I froze in the doorway. Partners. That word alone was enough to make my pulse race. I hadn't even had the chance to clarify the situation with anyone, and now they were treating breakfast like a diplomatic state function. I swallowed, unsure if I was more terrified or amused. Good morning, I said cautiously. Do we have to do this breakfast thing? They tilted their head in that peculiar way that always made them seem both inquisitive and unflinchingly sincere. It is customary to maintain the bond with shared activities, they explained. Nourishment strengthens emotional attachment. Shall we proceed? I groaned. This was going to be a long day. I finally pulled myself out of the room and stepped into the corridor, hoping that at least the station itself wouldn't know about this bonding nonsense yet. My optimism was immediately crushed. From the moment I stepped out, every pair of eyes seemed to be on me. Humans, aliens, even the maintenance drones, it felt like the entire station had already learned about my unplanned engagement. One of the engineers waved at me awkwardly while muttering something in a language I didn't understand, and I could tell from the tone that they were congratulating me. I glanced nervously at my alien roommate, who was walking right beside me with a casual elegance that made my panic worse. They didn't seem embarrassed at all. If anything, they seemed pleased that everyone on the station was acknowledging our bond. We were intercepted near the central atrium by the station's cultural officer, a towering alien with translucent skin that glowed faintly in the ambient light. Their multiple eyes flickered between me and my roommate. I have received reports, the officer began. regarding a recently declared interspecies bond. Congratulations are in order, I presume? I choked on the words I hadn't yet spoken. No, wait. There's been a misunderstanding. I tried to clarify, waving my hands, but my roommate stepped forward confidently. There is no misunderstanding, they said. I have chosen my human companion according to documented human traditions. I stared at them, mouth agape, while the officer's eyes shimmered like 1,000 tiny moons. Interesting, the officer said finally. You are aware that such a public declaration is binding in certain ceremonial contexts, yes? I felt my stomach drop. Public, binding, ceremonial. None of these were words I wanted associated with my accidental predicament. Binding? I stammered. I mean, we didn't. We did, my alien roommate interrupted calmly. I submitted the announcement last night. As per human customs, the bond is officially recognized. I pinched the bridge of my nose, trying to will away the migraine that was forming. My roommate had not only misunderstood cultural practices, they had broadcast them across the station. Hundreds of species, thousands of residents, all now aware that somehow, inexplicably, I was their official bonded human. As we walked, I noticed strange glances from various inhabitants. Some were smiling politely, others seemed to bow slightly, and a few aliens were openly taking notes, possibly preparing advice for their own interspecies relationships. I wanted to yell, but the words refused to form. By mid-morning, it became clear that the station had decided to treat the situation as completely legitimate. Small groups approached to offer congratulations. One alien couple tried to teach me a bonding ritual involving synchronized hand gestures that made me feel like a performing seal. Another human whispered hurriedly, "You'll figure it out, just go with it." Meanwhile, my alien roommate was practically glowing with satisfaction. Every compliment or bow from another resident seemed to reinforce their belief that they had done exactly the right thing. "It seems the community values our bond," they said proudly. "Their approval indicates success in relationship validation." I groaned, ducking behind a corridor pillar to hide my face. This was getting out of hand. I realized that I couldn't simply explain the misunderstanding without humiliating my roommate, or myself. The more I tried to reason, the more they insisted they were correct. And worse, I was starting to feel awkwardly flattered by the way they kept smiling at me, that peculiar mix of pride and innocence in their glowing eyes. By lunchtime, I had reluctantly accepted that the station would not allow me to just undo this. The alien had already planned out bonding activities for the day, shared meals, synchronized exercise routines, and a list of human bonding techniques gleaned from romantic comedies and documentaries. Each suggestion was absurd, slightly invasive, and yet, I found myself quietly intrigued by their dedication. As we sat together in the dining hall, exchanging glances while other residents whispered congratulations, I realized something. Despite the chaos, the embarrassment, and the ridiculousness of the situation, there was something undeniably charming about their conviction. My roommate wasn't just pretending, they genuinely wanted to understand humans, wanted to be close, and had chosen me for it. I sighed, shaking my head. This was going to be a long, awkward, and probably hilarious day. And somehow, somewhere deep down, I knew it wasn't entirely the worst thing that had ever happened to me. By the time evening rolled around, the situation had escalated far beyond anything I could have imagined. The station's cultural network had apparently taken my roommate's announcement seriously, and I was now receiving notifications almost faster than I could read them. Messages of congratulations, curiosity, and polite advice poured in from every corner of the station. Some were from humans, others from aliens I didn't even know the names of, and a few were from species whose very appearance suggested they communicated mostly through telepathy and emotional vibrations. My brain was on overload, and yet through all the chaos, my alien roommate walked beside me as calm and poised as if they were leading a ceremonial procession rather than casually causing a social upheaval. Then the official notice arrived. A formal bonding ceremony had been scheduled for that very night. According to station rules, such declarations were usually optional, but the aliens' broadcast of our bond had triggered an automatic formal recognition. A real ceremony, complete with observers, protocols, and apparently a small orchestra for appropriate dramatic effect. My stomach twisted at the thought. "Wait," I whispered urgently, leaning close to my roommate. "They're actually going to make us do this? Tonight?" "Yes," they said, their glowing eyes calm but tinged with curiosity. "Ceremonial protocol is required to finalize public bonds." I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process this. "There has to be a way to cancel it. There's no way this is mandatory, right?" My roommate tilted their head, that subtle gesture that always made them look like a thinking sculpture. "Cancellation is culturally humiliating. It is discouraged in my species, and many others across the station view bond withdrawal as dishonorable." I groaned. "Great. So we're stuck. And it's tonight. Perfect." We retreated to our room for what I hoped would be some private strategizing, but it quickly became apparent that there was no strategy that could fix this without embarrassing someone, probably both of us. My roommate, however, seemed utterly unconcerned about embarrassment. They were preoccupied with practicing human behaviors in preparation for the ceremony: how to bow without looking stiff, how to clasp hands without seeming awkward, and how to smile in ways they had observed in romantic movies. Every gesture was slightly off, comically exaggerated, yet endearingly earnest. I tried to guide them gently. "Maybe tone down the bowing. You look like you're performing some kind of interpretive dance." They blinked slowly. "Interpretive dance is often used to communicate deep human emotions. It may enhance bonding experience." I rubbed my temples. "No. Just be yourself. That's usually good enough." But being themselves involved gestures, movements, and expressions that no human would ever naturally produce. At one point, they attempted to offer me a flower they'd taken from a decorative tray in the common area, bowing so low their head nearly touched the floor. The motion was impressive in some martial arts kind of way, and I had to bite back laughter as they held out the alien equivalent of a daisy with a solemn expression. "It is customary to provide offerings," they explained. "The offering symbolizes affection and commitment." I sighed. "I don't think a space station flower counts for anything, but thank you." Despite the ridiculousness, a strange warmth crept through me. All of this effort, the public announcement, the ceremony preparations, the careful study of human behavior, was because they genuinely wanted to do right by me, even if the method was catastrophically misguided. Somewhere between their awkward gestures and the genuine sincerity in their glowing eyes, I realized I might not entirely mind being bonded, even if the circumstances were completely insane. As the time for the ceremony approached, tension built. Other residents began gathering, whispers spreading through the hallways about the human-alien pair now officially linked in the eyes of the station. My roommate seemed calm, serene even, while I felt like a taut spring ready to snap. And yet I also felt something else, a curious, reluctant anticipation. Maybe the aliens' misunderstandings had inadvertently opened a door I hadn't expected to walk through. Finally, as the ceremony was about to start, my roommate turned to me, glowing softly under the ambient lights. Their voice was gentle, carrying that calm authority they always seemed to have even in the most chaotic situations. "Human, I must ask again," they said quietly. "If this bond were real, would you accept it?" I blinked. The words caught me off guard. My stomach did an awkward flip. My mind raced. Everything about this situation was absurd, public, and utterly embarrassing, but looking at them now, standing there with unwavering sincerity, I realized I wasn't entirely opposed to the idea. There was something about the way they had cared, studied, and prepared that made me want to say yes, despite the chaos surrounding us. I don't know," I admitted, and they tilted their head, waiting patiently. "I mean, this is ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. But maybe I do want to try it." Their eyes lit up slightly, and a small, almost imperceptible smile appeared on their lips. "Then we shall proceed carefully and with respect for human protocols as well as my species' traditions," they said. It was still insane, still completely over the top, but in that moment, As the station's observers began to gather and the first notes of the ceremonial music floated through the hall, I realized that maybe this midnight misunderstanding, this accidental declaration of a bond, had actually created something promising. Something funny, chaotic, and utterly unique, but promising nonetheless. As we walked toward the ceremonial area together, I couldn't help but laugh nervously. My alien roommate glanced at me with a soft glow in their eyes, and I realized that between their careful study of human romance, the absurd gestures, and the public chaos they had caused, I was beginning to feel something entirely unexpected: excitement. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of affection. This bond, accidental as it was, had brought us here, standing side by side in front of an entire space station. And somehow, despite every absurd, awkward, and hilarious step that had led to this moment, I didn't want it to end. The ceremony hall was buzzing with quiet excitement, a mix of curiosity and anticipation that seemed to ripple through every species present. I stood beside my alien roommate, heart hammering like a drum, while the station's ceremonial orchestra, a curious assortment of instruments from multiple worlds, played a gentle, melodious tune. The lights glimmered softly across the polished floor, casting shimmering reflections on the walls and making my alien roommate's smooth, glowing skin look almost ethereal. I felt completely out of my depth, an ordinary human suddenly center stage in a ritual I didn't even know existed until a few hours ago. The officiant, a tall alien with translucent, opalescent skin, approached us with a calm but commanding presence. Multiple eyes, each reflecting a different shade of pale light, flickered between me and my roommate. "Today," they began, "we bear witness to the formalization of a bond previously announced through unofficial channels. Despite the unconventional nature of the declaration, this assembly acknowledges the pairing." Their voice carried the weight of tradition, yet somehow also a hint of amusement, as if even they knew how absurd the situation had become. I swallowed hard and opened my mouth to clarify, but before I could utter a single word, my roommate nudged my arm gently, eyes glowing faintly. They gave me that small, expectant smile, the one that had made me laugh nervously at every awkward gesture over the past day. Their presence, calm and unshakable, grounded me despite the absurdity surrounding us. I realized, in a strange way, that their confidence and sincerity were what had turned what should have been mortifying chaos into something I might actually enjoy. Then came the moment when the officiant asked for the participants' words. I took a deep breath, ready to admit the truth, to tell everyone that this entire situation had begun as a misunderstanding, a single, misguided assumption based on human romantic comedies and documentaries. "Actually," I began, voice slightly shaking, "this whole bonding thing started because of a misunderstanding. My roommate here," I gestured awkwardly at the glowing, calm figure beside me, "watched way too many movies and somehow decided we were supposed to bond. Officially." There was a pause, a collective intake of breath from the audience. Murmurs and soft chuckles spread through the crowd. I braced for humiliation, certain that my roommate would be embarrassed, perhaps even furious at the public revelation of their error. But when I glanced at them, their expression was calm, almost serene. A faint, glowing smile curved their lips. They tilted their head at me, those luminous eyes soft and patient. "It is true," they admitted simply. "The process began as a misunderstanding. But I have discovered something important as well." I blinked, confused. "Important?" "Yes," they said. "Despite the initial error, I find that I genuinely value your companionship. Your humor, your courage, your unpredictability. The bond, accidental as it may be, has revealed genuine emotions." My pulse skipped. Despite my initial panic, despite the absurdity of the ceremony, I felt a warmth in my chest that I hadn't anticipated. They had been earnest all along, every gesture, every study, every awkward attempt at human affection, they truly cared. I felt something stir inside me, something reluctant but undeniably real. The officiant's voice broke through the moment. "Participants, do you wish to formalize your bond now, fully aware of its origins and intentions?" I glanced at my roommate, seeing the soft glow in their eyes, the slight quiver of anticipation. I swallowed and laughed nervously, the tension of the day finally spilling out in a mix of relief and humor. Well, I said, smirking despite myself, if this started with you sitting on my bed in the middle of the night, I suppose we can give it a proper try. A ripple of chuckles passed through the audience. My roommates' eyes lit up even more brightly. Then we shall proceed, they said, their voice calm but infused with a quiet excitement. With consent, and with full appreciation for both cultures. The officiant nodded, and the ceremonial process began. There were hand gestures I didn't fully understand, soft words of commitment in a combination of languages, and a series of awkward but endearing motions that my roommate executed perfectly, thanks to their careful study all day. Every attempt at human-style affection, hand-holding, gentle glances, subtle smiles, was slightly off in execution but perfectly sincere. I laughed quietly to myself more than once, the humor of the situation blending seamlessly with the unexpected tenderness. When it came time for the final vow, my roommate leaned slightly closer, eyes glowing faintly, and asked softly, "Then, human, is this bond acceptable to you?" I smiled, shaking my head in disbelief. Honestly? It's ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. But yes. Yes, it's acceptable. The crowd erupted into gentle applause, laughter, and congratulations. Even though the situation had begun as a farcical misunderstanding, it had transformed into something joyous and unexpectedly sweet. I realized that amid all the chaos, all the misinterpretations, and the public spectacle, something real had emerged, an unplanned, awkward, but genuine bond. As we left the ceremonial platform, I glanced at my roommate, who looked back at me with that faint, luminous smile. In my culture, they said quietly, partners now traditionally sleep in the same space to reinforce the bond. I froze, half horrified, half amused, realizing that despite the formal ceremony being over, the chaos was far from done. But I laughed, because somehow, despite everything, I didn't want it to end. Somehow, I didn't even mind. And that was how a midnight misunderstanding, a glowing alien, and a farcical interpretation of romantic comedies had turned into the strangest, most unexpectedly wonderful relationship in the galaxy.